Hello everybody, welcome again to Midweek Encouragement. I'm so glad you're here with us. We're going to have a great time tonight. Maybe it's a good time to invite your friends and co-workers and family and neighbors and whoever you'd like to see join us here tonight. It is Wednesday, it is 7:30, and I'm so glad you're with us. We are going to begin a new series tonight, and it's going to be based in and around John chapter 9 and eventually a little bit of chapter 10 before we're all finished. I think you're going to enjoy it. I'm enjoying it as we're preparing for all of these things. So thank you for coming. Make sure you're starting a watch party or sharing a video somehow. If you're on Facebook, hit that like button. If you're happen to be on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, then hit the subscribe button and make sure the little bell is activated so you can get notifications when we are online and live like we typically are every Wednesday night. Thank you so much. It is such an honor to be here tonight with you. Make sure you've got your Bible and your note-taking devices, whether it's pen and paper or your phone or your tablet, whatever it may be. Get those together and let's study together. Let's learn together. I'm excited about where we're going here. We're learning more and more about what it means to be a disciple, and learning more and more about what Jesus taught his disciples about being disciples, which is exciting to me. The whole point of this is to try to discover Jesus as a first century Jewish male in the culture, the climate, the socioeconomic places he was in, the culture overall, everything about where he was and who he was and what he was teaching and the circumstances around it. When you start to paint the picture and you kind of get a better sense of the scenery around where he is and maybe the circumstances, things that are going on around him, like we talked about the various feasts that he was in and different things that were going on that really amplify what he said and give more depth and meaning to some of the things that he said in a way that starts to make more and more sense. And that excites me as well. And then to understand a little more about how the disciples and those to whom he was speaking would have received what he said is always important and enlightening as well. But we are going to go to John chapter 9 and get started in our new series called Sent. Sent. It's right here. So get ready. John chapter 9, verses 1 through 6 reads like this. Now, as Jesus passed by, he saw a man who was blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had said these things, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. I read a lot, and we've got a lot to try to unpack here in the limited time that we have to get this done. So join in this little journey we have here. So John chapter 9. As we're opening this, it seems to me that it would be important to remember some things about the culture, the cultural setting where we are here. Remember, we are in first century Judea. The prominent religion is Judaism there, of course. Rome is the controlling authority, the taxing authority. This is an interesting time in history, just to keep in mind all of these things. So the disciples are asking a question that is already assuming an answer, and that's a dangerous thing to do. What do I mean? I mean they're asking a question assuming that sin was at the root of this blind man's issues. It wasn't what happened. Why is he blind? That wasn't the question. The question was, who sinned, him or his parents? So, and the question was not whether or not sin was involved, but who was it that was guilty of the sin causing the malady? And again, this is the cultural setting, because there was a cultural belief at that time that if there was a deformity or some sort of sickness, that sin was causing that or had caused that malady. Therefore, the one who is bearing a deformity or a sickness or an illness has to also bear the guilt and shame of assumed sin in their life. So, and even in the lives of their family, as we see here. So, thus the question about who committed the sin. So they assumed already that sin was involved and sin was the cause of his blindness. Even though he was born blind, wouldn't that mean that he would have had to have sinned in the womb if it was his? I don't know. I don't even want to go there because before we get overly critical, maybe we need to look at some of our own assumptions, because that's illuminating in and of itself. Because people still do the same thing today. Maybe not. Well, I don't know. Maybe it could be similar. It looks different because we're in the 21st century, not the first century, but it's really kind of the same thing nonetheless. So here's how it goes. Well, that must be the judgment of God for what he or she did. Something bad happens, and all of us know, oh boy, there's the judgment of God on them right there. And another one, they had that coming. Yeah, if they had done this or if they had done that, then things would be altogether different. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe this is some kind of a security mechanism for us. You see, if we assume that bad things happen because people deserve it, somebody did something and some bad thing happened. Oh, well, they got what they deserve. Well, if that's true, then we don't have to live in fear that some bad thing might just randomly happen to us, right? That there's some kind of cause and effect, that somehow we find the need to redeem these bad things and make it something connected to some evil in someone's life. Because if life is random, then life is really difficult to understand. We don't like the randomness of things. But on the other hand, if we can blame things on something else, then we don't have to worry about the bad things happening to us or to our children or grandchildren because we're not like that. And because we're not like that, then bad things are not going to happen to us, right? Because that's how we try to justify things and try to reason bad things out. In the days of the disciples, every disease or deformity seemed to have some category of what sin caused it. If you had leprosy, it was this thing that caused it. Or if you were born lame, then it must have been this. Or blind, it had to be this. Or whatever the case may be. So when they happened upon someone, the disciples and Jesus traveling, and they're not. I'm assuming they're probably still around the temple. And they're leaving the area, and they happen to come across someone who was born blind. Now that's, again, a bit confusing because, how can you blame him for sin committed when he was born blind? Who was to blame for it? And that's the confusion that's here. That's why they're asking the question. Was it the man who is suffering in his blindness that committed a sin, or Was it his parents who committed a sin and now their son suffers because they did wrong? Is that what we're saying here? And I think it is. And of course, that's where the whole concept of this whole ideal falls apart. Do innocent people suffer because of the crime or the sin of someone else? Does a child suffer because of the sins of the parents? I suppose there could be some good in this belief structure. One of the good things is that there's probably a general fear of doing something wrong, right? You don't want to do anything wrong because you don't want judgment to happen to you. You don't want the whole thing to come back on you. Because bad things happen if you do the wrong thing, and so you don't want bad things to happen, so you try to stay away from the wrong. Well, there's a couple of solutions in this structure as well, and answers to life, so to speak. One is that you can live very happily in the belief that bad things don't just randomly happen to you. You don't have to worry about something randomly bad occurring if you just stay on the right side of things. And the second thing is related, because there's great motivation to not do wrong things. Because if you do wrong things, bad things happen to you. So you've got the ability to live without fear and motivation to do good things and stay away from wrong things. And so, and on the surface, it's like, hey, those are good things, right? It's the best of both worlds. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you start to look more closely at what's happening and you start to take scenarios to their natural conclusions, their logical conclusions, you find some bad results, and you find some things that are going to be problematic in this construct. One is that in this construct, bad things happen to you when you know you're innocent and didn't do anything wrong. So something bad happens that's supposed to indicate this particular wrong thing, and you didn't do that. How do you explain it? It's confusing. Because it's not supposed to be like that. You thought there wasn't supposed to be anything like that happening, and you can get really depressed thinking, and you've heard this, I have too, thinking that God is punishing you somehow for something. In other words, somehow God is punishing you for something even that you didn't do, or some wrong you didn't commit, because this malady or this circumstance is connected to this wrongdoing in the first century, of course. And hopefully not now. But then what? Where's the justice? I thought God was a just God. I thought He was fair. Is God fair? Is He arbitrary? What is this? What's going on here? If there is a definitive cause and effect to all wrong and sin, what happened when you didn't commit it and bad things happen? That's one place where things kind of fall apart. Another one is where you actually do something wrong and nothing happens. So you've done something, you've committed some sin, and in the first century world you do this, and then this bad thing is supposed to happen to you. Well, you do this thing, intentionally or otherwise, and nothing bad happens to you. Now what? Well, in that sense, in that case, you can assume that whatever it was that you did, you got away with it. Maybe God was asleep. Maybe He wasn't watching. Maybe He didn't pay attention to you. Maybe you don't have His attention. In any case, you got away with it. Or maybe there is no God. Maybe if that's the case, there is no real justice in the universe. There is no such thing then as wrong and right. There is no moral absolutes anywhere. And what's right and wrong is in the estimation of the individual and not so much set in stone. That being the case, I can do whatever I want to do, and nothing will happen because of what I do. See, in life there are those who are just simply wicked and evil. You may know somebody. Don't call their names right now, and don't try to think about them. But you know, we've known, all of us probably have known people who just seem to be evil, wicked in their ways, and yet, and I could call famous names that you might even know. But these people sometimes it seems like they live however they want to live, doing the most ridiculously heinous, awful things you can imagine, and they seem to prosper. They never get caught. Everything goes great. They live a full life. They die peacefully at a ripe old age. What's up with that? And then there's others who give their life selflessly to the kingdom, and something happens, and they get some disease, or there's a tragic accident or something, and they die relatively young and seemingly unfinished with the work that they are doing, and they're excited, and they're trying to do everything they can and giving all that they have. Is there justice? Does that make sense? See, the truth is this. Now, I want you to hear me. Life is certainly far more random than we want to accept. Life doesn't fit into a tiny little box somehow. It just doesn't. And we have to accept that. It is what it is. And we have to make sure that as we are teaching and preaching Jesus, that people understand that Jesus is not some magic bullet that fixes everything and then everything is okay from there on out. I'm telling you, bad things do happen to good people. And good things sometimes happen to bad people. So, these disciples they come by this blind man, and they ask Jesus, who sinned? And what was Jesus' answer? Jesus said, neither of them sinned. What do you mean neither of them sinned? So why would something like this happen so if it was confusing to them at first, and it was probably one of those things that everybody talked about from time to time, you know. Well, if sin is the issue, then how is it someone is born with this malady? Are they suffering for the parents? Does the innocent suffer for the sins of someone else? Do the parents get away with it and the child suffer for the sins of the parents? Well, Jesus gives the answer. He said, neither of them sinned. And the reason these things like this happen is that the works of God should be revealed in him. So why are there problems in our world? There's problems in our world so God can show up. See, without darkness, you wouldn't notice the light. We go through problems so that we can see God better. Your situations, your circumstances, your problems, the things you have to go through are there for a reason. There's purpose in it. And if God did not bring it about, He can redeem it and make it work for your good in the end. So, understand this, and you've heard me say it, I'll say it again. Things don't happen to you. They happen for you. A dear friend said this, a few weeks ago. We were just talking about similar kind of things, and he made the statement, and while I have believed that and tried to say it, that just says it so much better than I could have. Things don't happen to you, things happen for you. If you will look in every situation, you will find God in the midst of your darkness. Now, I know that we generally are going to want answers for why bad things happen to good people. But the truth is, there is no clear, clean-cut, concise, direct answer for that question. Except to say that there is a higher purpose. That circumstance is there to allow us to see God better. And if we can keep that framed in the right way, I think it helps us walk through those dark times. That the circumstance is there to allow us to see God better and more clearly through your circumstance. Because God doesn't always deliver you from your circumstance. Sometimes He walks with you in and through your circumstance. If you believe that bad things don't happen when you serve Jesus, then your faith is going to get destroyed, because bad things are going to happen. And when bad things happen and you think they're not supposed to happen, you wonder, where is God? Why is He not helping me? How come this happened when I'm serving God? And you can go through all of those various mental gyrations, if you will, to try to figure out why. And the truth is, there is no real clear-cut answer as to why. And we should never set up some false perception about the kingdom of God either, because if you start telling everybody that when you come to Jesus all your problems are solved, then you're setting them up to be wounded and to blame God. We don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. You don't want to blame God either. You need to understand, bad things do happen, but God can use them. Sometimes God allows things that need to happen in you, for you, not to you. Just the way life is. Keep that in mind. If you're going through a circumstance, understand God's with you in it. If you're just coming out of it, thank God for making you better and for teaching you what you needed to go. If you're just starting to experience something, start to look for God in the middle of the circumstance and see what He's going to do in that time of difficulty and darkness. Jesus continues on in what we read. He says, I must work the works of Him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work. That's interesting. And just for transparency's sake and for an understanding, I think it's clear that there is an alternative translation to what's written there. The alternative translation says, we must work the works of Him who sent me while it is day. And this is certainly the concept Jesus is promoting in His disciples. Even though in this moment they're not doing a lot of interacting. They ask a question and now Jesus is using the moment. They're observing and they're learning. And of course they were the ones who noticed the blind man. But Jesus is taking advantage of the opportunity and using it as a teachable moment to give them more information about the kingdom and what they need to know about the kingdom. He says, this man is here for the glory of God. And He's saying we have things to do right now for the glory of God. We have this moment and only this moment. And that's important for us too, because that's all we have is the moment. We don't have anything from yesterday. We can't redo, undo anything from yesterday. It is what it is, and we can simply look forward and try to change what happens next. But we only have now. See, later when Jesus is arrested, He's not going to heal the blind man. Later, when He's beaten, He might be wounded for our transgressions and bruised for our iniquities, and by His stripes we are healed. I get that. But in that moment when He's being beaten, He's not healing the blind man. He wouldn't heal him then. Look, after the cross, He didn't heal anybody. He was dead and put into a tomb. There was no healing then. So later was not an option. And later is never an option. And for us, it's the understanding that there is an end coming. We have an end coming. We don't know when it is, but we're either going to be translated from this life into the presence of Jesus, or we die and enter our reward that way. We don't know when that time is. We see the timing and the seasons, and look, there is no predictable moment that Jesus is coming back. We can't predict it, and if anybody tells you they can, they're lying. They don't know the Word of God. and they're just trying to pull something up or make something up or read into something that's just simply not there. Jesus said that we're not going to know the day or the hour. We can determine a season, and that's entirely different. Here's the thing. That could happen any moment. Any of us could pass away at any moment for any number of reasons. Life is very tentative. It is short. We're here for a while. It's like a vapor. It's a grass that fades out of the summer. We don't know when we're finished here. And I'm saying that to say this. We only have this moment. We only have right now. And what are we doing with right now? How are we using our right now? In the first century, it was a true statement to say in the night no one can work. Now, of course, it's a little different for us here in the 21st century. We've got modern conveniences and technology that allows people to work at any time, day or night. We understand that. So for us, that statement sounds a little odd. But in general, in the first century, they didn't have graveyard shift unless you were military or out on the sea or something crazy where there had to be an overnight watch. And that was rare. It wasn't the rule. They didn't have graveyard shifts in the same way that we have them today. So typically, if you lived in the first century, when it got dark, you went to bed and you slept at night and you worked during the day. So when the day was over, your work was done. When your opportunity ends, it's over. We only have this moment. And the time to work is not tomorrow. It's not next week or next month. The time to work in the kingdom is now. Now is the time to reach our neighbors, our friends, our family, our loved ones. Now is the time. We can't afford to wait until next year. You are an influence for the kingdom of God right where you are right now, on the street in which you live. Tomorrow is not ever promised to any of us. The time is now. This is the moment. So don't wait for a convenient moment. It's time to pray for your neighbors and your friends and your family now. It's time to be searching for an opportunity to gently share what you can with them and at the level they can receive now. Now we have to be sensitive. We have to be available. We have to be very present in our moment. But I ask you, how else is God going to work in their lives? You've heard me say it. You are the church. Wherever you are, that's where the church is. You are the representation of Jesus. In that moment, every single moment. Now, anything might change between now and next year. Things change next month, or sometimes the next day. Sometimes in the very next moment, things are different. So I want you to understand in my last moments tonight, now is the time to do the work of the kingdom. And I am running out of time once again, and I'm so excited about what we're going through and what we're doing here with sent in John chapter 9. You can keep reading in John 9 and first part of John 10 if you like, if you want to get a head start and kind of get a sense of where we're going and what's about to be happening here. Thank you once again for this wonderful time we have together. Please hear my heart tonight. This is our opportunity. Work while we can. Do what we can while we can. Because there's coming a time when our time's over and we go on. So now is the accepted time. Now is the day of salvation. Today is the day of salvation. So thank you. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Next week, we pick this up right where we left off here tonight. And going to continue on working in John chapter 9. And hopefully get some more information. God bless you richly. Thank you so much. And as always, until the time we meet again next week, love God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Please fast, pray, give generously. And now you go and make a disciple.